Okay, y'all, commiserate with me for a moment. Am I the only one who just screamed no at the top of their lungs at their television when the episode ended? Holy crap, I am so spoiled by having 2 episodes to binge. What the conclusion? Oh, this is so good. Okay. So let's get down to it. Let's start off with the numbers. So this episode did have a couple of weak spots. I will not sugarcoat it. But once again, like the last episode, when it was on, it was on. I felt like there were more weak spots, but they weren't as egregious. Also, I felt like the highs, while insanely high, there weren't as many, if that makes any sense. Sorry, I literally just ended the episode, and I want to get these thoughts down before we progress too far. Yeah, so fantastic episode, awesome storytelling, awesome audio once again, but there were just some unfortunate discretions with the anime. Now, if I'm with the animation specifically, if I'm totally honest here, 90% of that is just kind of JC Staff doing JC Staff things. So I'm going to give it a 9. I'm going to give it a solid 9. I'm going to give it a solid 9. Because once again, when it was on, but it wasn't, they didn't turn it up as much to like the 11-12 mark this time around like they did in the previous episode. But episode 12 was the comeback episode, so it makes a lot of sense. Now, when we left off with the end of episode 12, we know that Hedon more or less just has now taken out the healers. I think I called old girl an elf in the last episode. They call their team like the elf or whatever, but she is just a human. But she is or best I can tell, just a human. But she's basically their white mage, and they are all basically a team of mages. And that's kind of their whole thing. They're a team of healers, and that's kind of what they do. So, essentially, what happens is Hedon takes as many of them out as possible, but old girl is kind of left over, and he kind of has to deal with her. Sorry, I nicked the mic there. I'm excited. I talk a lot with my hands. I don't want to lose my thoughts, so otherwise I'm not going to edit that out or anything. So, essentially, he takes her out, right? Or he's working on taking her out, and he's just like, it's a matter of time. He's like, you have a limited pool of mana. You only have so much time that you are going to be able to fight, to resist my onslaught. You might as well just back down. And you find out that this isn't necessarily like him per se. He's not necessarily betraying Freya so much as it's his interpretation of what she needs. He's really more, if you really kind of dig down into the whole episode, you really think about it, he's more interested in what Seer's needs are, less Freya's needs. Kind of like, like as he mentions, it's no different than what Horn did, and kind of very much similar to that whole situation. There's a lot of Seer moments in this episode, even though she is kind of like for all intents and purposes, Horn is dead, right? Like there's no two ways about that one. But I guess there is kind of a sort of way about that. And we do meet Seer a few times. Obviously, the whole pub has basically come to her side, and she basically encourages everybody from the pub to partake in their in the mission, up to and including Mamma Mia, which was one of the most insane moments in the episode. And it was more or less, although Loki has kind of like, Loki is more or less neutral in this, and very much not by choice, but kind of by like designation, because if Loki were to take one side or the other, that would slant everything, just because of how powerful their family is. But she does kind of convince Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia is just like, look, I will get involved if Seer herself tells me. And then she basically takes her to where she's being kept in this crypt, and she basically is, she's more or less in just a speaking coma, so to speak. And she does. She basically asks everyone for help. Now, in the last episode, I was like, it doesn't make a lot of sense for all these other people to get involved if their familias are not, if they're not part of a familia. And then you find out that all the girls are technically in one familia or another. So, it is what it is at the end of the day. But we get this amazing showdown between Mamma Mia, who we always knew was strong. We always knew deep down, especially if you read the novels or any of the synopses or anything like that, anything beyond the anime, you knew she was powerful, and we knew she was up there. But they even mentioned that, like, she, at her peak, had a stronger punch than Otaro. Now, when they face off, Otaro mentions, he's like, you've gotten weak. And she's like, well, you've gotten stronger. And they're basically, they're kind of toe-to-toe. Like, she gets the upper hand on him, he gets the upper hand on her. It's literally his giant, like, buster sword versus he's got this huge Swyander thing, and he's just beating the snot out of her with it, and all she's got is a shovel, which I think is just the most badass thing. She brought a shovel to a sword fight, which is just indicative of, like, the badassery that we're witnessing here. Meanwhile, obviously, we're using the back. She's healing Belle, and we do get a little bit of information from Hestia. Hestia's kind of wandered off, and she runs into Miyach, and she's like, what can we do now? And he's more or less like, look, at this point, the best thing we can do is we can kind of, meet them on the front lines and do a status update. And she's like, that is an option. And actually, if you go back, and I can't remember if man, it's been so long since I watched season 1. I'd have to go back and remember if they actually showed it. But in the original, in the light novels, which I just read for season 1, I got to go back and rewatch the anime because it's been years since I've watched it. Literally at this point. Hestia does a status update on Belle while they're fighting the Silverback, or basically while they're running from the Silverback. So this is not the first time. This is basically taking everything you've learned over so many books and so many seasons and so many episodes of the anime, and all of that, and it's like it's drawing from a little bit of everything, and it's giving you all this information, and just one basically huge, like, micro dump is the best way I can word it. It's like all this information comprised of like 20 minutes. It did not feel like 20 minutes. There was so much going on in this episode. It was crazy. Absolutely bonkers. If you can't tell, I'm still buzzing from it. That's why I want to nick the mic earlier. Normally I'd restart the recording, but I just want to get my thoughts down while I'm still excited about this. So Mamma Mia and Otaro are just facing off, and then basically Ryu manages to get Belle healed, and then of course they jump into the fight, but we don't really get to see much of that. What we do get to see is that Ryu finally basically confesses to Belle. She's like, like after the whole thing in the dungeon and all that, she's like, legitimately, I have romantic feelings for you. And Belle is just taken aback by this. Like, obviously he's just, the hell? But brushes it off, and they go in for the fight, right? It is now 3-on-1, and that is just crazy. But you got to remember, we still have all these, like, first-class adventurers out there that they have to take care of. And slowly but surely, you start seeing the waitresses start to interact with all of the Hestia family, and they start, like, they're strategizing. Lily's actually doing, like, this crazy strategy stuff where they basically are trying to, like, conquer and divide, so to speak. So Alan obviously is off. He's basically doing all the hunting for all the deities, and he's found a whole bunch of them. But now he's running back to the front line, and they're like, "Well, the Alfred brothers, they have to get broken up because as a quartet, or like a better way to put it, they're essentially impenetrable, right? As 4, they are nigh unstoppable. But as 1, they are weak. So they unleash these crazy attacks. And I love it too, because we finally see Anya get out there and do her stuff. And what does she do? She unleashes this insane, beastly roar. And it's big enough. It's immense enough. It essentially affects everybody all over the field. In fact, later on in the episode, you see Lily like dumping potions on herself to get the debuffs completely off of her. But everybody is essentially debuffed out there. Everybody gets a debuff. Now, when this happens, it obviously puts I take that back. I think the waitresses probably aren't debuffed or because you never see them quite affected with all the kind of that red stuff. But most of the Hestia Familia seems to be debuffed. We haven't seen if Otaral's affected by it yet. I'm sure that they'll cover it in the next episode. But here's the deal, guys. Basically now they have a chance, and Haruhime manages to unleash her level boost skill. Now, she's kind of told not to do this by Samira and Lena, but she's very much like, look, it's fine. People are going to come after me. They're eventually going to find out anyway. There's no two ways about this. I absolutely must use my skill. I have to be of use. Remember, she was running around with that invisibility cloak when Anya did her roar and her debuff. It essentially, literally, it was like powerful enough it knocked the cloak off of her. So now she's like, everyone's going to see, but it is what it is. They were going to find out anyway eventually. And she unleashes the biggest one we've ever seen and level boosts more or less everybody in the near vicinity. And this is the upper hand that they needed. One by one, they start singling out the Alfred brothers. Now, what's really awesome, and I think this is the greatest thing, once again, a piece of the first season that we get to see is when Lily runs in and she unleashes a smoke screen. And we know she's devious. We know she's tricky. But when she unleashes the smoke screen, more or less what they can like divide and conquer now. And even Mikoto drops like her big skill, and Lily actually pretends to be one of the brothers. And while he's over there, like more or less, one of the other ones is trying to get his attention, more or less like, throw him a spear. It actually winds up knocking her over. She gets damaged by it. And, now he's broken off from the group. And slowly but surely, they all just start falling. And I love when Lunar just starts knocking the crap out of one of the other guys. Just hand to hand taking him down. And it's just disarray. And it's the perfect distraction, everything that they needed to just start, ripping the veil down, I guess, so to speak, and just absolutely taking these guys out one by one. And little by little, they do wind up taking them out. It's just the greatest strategic moment, I honestly think, in the whole series. Probably the greatest moment of, like, insane strategy that we have probably ever seen, maybe short of Freya's whole, like, charm everybody thing. But even that, like, was weird and had its own holes and wasn't really well planned out. It was just her being her. And little by little, though, you are starting to get from Freya herself this kind of notion where even Mamma Mia says, like, the first time I met her, she was in a field of flowers crying. And, like, that's that. Like, that's who she apparently is actually. So, like, this big, haughty, boastful, proud version of Freya is apparently not the real Freya. Seer is very much what some of these people seem to think the real Freya is. Now, who the real Freya is, I guess we're going to find out in the end. But the honest answer here is, guys, this episode was phenomenal. It really did so much in 20 minutes. I thought I was watching 2 or 3 episodes. I really, there's so much more to talk about. So deep we could go with so many discussions. It was so damn good. Just so damn good. So, let me know what you guys thought. Now, we do know that the next episode is not going to be out for a little while. The 28th, I believe, is when the next episode airs. So we have, or 26th? I don't know. We have about 3 weeks before that episode airs. Then the final episode will be on the 5th. So, unfortunately, guys, this is going to be a little bit of a break. We will talk between now and then. And like I said in the prior video, since I am now like going back and reading the first light novel and forward so we can catch up, we will talk a lot more about the light novel stuff. We'll talk a lot more about that. Once I finish the main series, we'll get into Sword Oratoria. And my goal is to get caught up here before too terribly long so you can really have this discussion. Unfortunately, it is very slow reading for me just because I don't have a lot of reading time. But we will do it little by little and catch up and have a lot of fun. So let me know what you guys thought. Stay tuned for more Danmachi. We'll be covering a lot more coming up soon. Also, we should maybe today or possibly this weekend, get another episode or get another manga chapter of Wistoria, which will be fun. That's coming up shortly as well. So make sure you guys subscribe to stay up to date, and I'll see you again real soon.